1602, 17 men sat around a table in Amsterdam and made a decision that would change the world forever. They didn't command an army. They didn't rule a country. They didn't even leave the city. They did something far more powerful. They invented a way to own the world without ever touching it. This is their story, and it's also yours. It's the late 1500s. Europe is obsessed with one thing: spices, black pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon. To Europeans, these weren't just flavors. They were medicine, currency, and status symbols. A single sack of pepper was worth more than a working man's entire yearly wage. The problem? Spices only grew in one place: the islands of Southeast Asia, thousands of miles away, across some of the most dangerous waters on Earth. Getting there meant months at sea, storms, disease, pirates, and hostile rivals at every turn. Portuguese traders had dominated the route for decades, and they weren't sharing. Dutch merchants wanted in. But the journey was too expensive, too dangerous, and too uncertain for any single merchant to attempt alone. A ship could make one man incredibly rich, or it could sink, taking everything he owned to the bottom of the ocean. They needed a new system, something no one had ever tried before. In 1602, the Dutch government did something radical. They merged 6 competing trading companies into one, a single, unified entity with one mission: dominate global trade. They called it the Verenigde Oostindische Compagnie, the VOC, the Dutch East India Company. But the real innovation wasn't the company itself, it was how they paid for it. For the first time in history, they opened the investment to ordinary people. Any citizen could buy a share, a piece of the company, a claim on future profits. For as little as 50 guilders, roughly 2 months' wages for a skilled craftsman, you could become part owner of the most ambitious trading operation the world had ever seen. 6 cities formed the backbone of this empire: Amsterdam, Middelburg, Rotterdam, Delft, Enkhuizen, and Hoorn, a small harbour town in North Holland that punched far above its weight, sending ships, merchants, and ambition to the other side of the world. Each city sent its own representative to the board. Together, they formed the Heeren 17, the 17 men who would run the world. Over 1,000 people bought in during the first year alone: merchants, bakers, servants, and widows. All of them shareholders in something that had never existed before. This was the world's first public stock offering. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange was born, and modern capitalism had its beginning. But someone had to be in charge. That's where the Heeren 17 came in. The Heeren 17, the 17 gentlemen, were the board of directors of the VOC. 17 men elected from the 6 founding chambers, who made every major decision: where to sail, what to trade, when to go to war, and make no mistake, they did go to war. The VOC wasn't just a trading company. It had its own army, its own navy, its own prisons and courts. It could sign treaties with foreign kings, build forts, and execute enemies. At its peak, the VOC employed over 50,000 people worldwide. It operated across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. It controlled the global supply of nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon so completely that it could set prices anywhere on Earth. The 17 men in Amsterdam never left their boardroom, but their decisions shaped the lives of millions across the globe. And the shareholders back home, they just collected their dividends. In its best years, the VOC paid dividends of over 40%. 40% returns on a single year. The richest shareholders became some of the wealthiest people in the world, not through labor, not through conquest, simply by owning a piece of paper. Sound familiar? But there was a price. The VOC's profits didn't come from clever trading alone. They came from violence, monopoly, and exploitation on a scale the world had never seen. On the Banda Islands, VOC forces massacred nearly the entire population, estimated at 15,000 people, to seize control of the nutmeg trade. In Ceylon and Java, local populations were forced to grow crops for VOC profit under threat of death. The VOC was also deeply involved in the slave trade. It transported over 900,000 enslaved people across Asia and Africa during its nearly 200 years of operation. The 17 men in Amsterdam knew all of this. They signed the orders, they read the reports, and the shareholders collected their dividends. This is the part of financial history that rarely gets discussed. The first stock market wasn't built on innovation alone. It was built on power and on the suffering of people who never saw a single guilder of the profits. The VOC collapsed in 1799. Corruption, competition, and debt finally brought it down after nearly 2 centuries. But the system it created never died. The stock market, shareholder dividends, corporate boards, limited liability, these are all VOC inventions, and they still govern how wealth is built and distributed today. The 17 men who sat around that table in Amsterdam in 1602 couldn't have imagined a world where millions of ordinary people own shares in thousands of companies across the globe. But they started it. The question is, now that you know how the system was built, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to watch from the outside? Or are you going to become a shareholder? That choice, the same choice Amsterdam citizens made in 1602, is still available to you today. This has been the Heeren 17. If you want to understand how money and power really work, subscribe. There is much more to uncover. My last name is Houtman, and yes, that name has been part of this story for over 400 years.